Banks Repeta stars in the film Armageddon Time. I'm David Buchanan with Gold Derby. Banks, I'm so glad to be with you today because the movie and your character in particular is so interesting and so complicated. So I wanted to start just by asking you, what was your favorite character trait of Paul's, and what was your favorite part of playing him in this movie?
Wow. That's a good one. I'm definitely gonna have to go with the fact that Paul's an artist and a dreamer, and he comes up with these big ideas and doesn't let anybody try and stop him.
That's great. And for people who don't know, the movie is based on James Gray's, childhood. It's loosely based on him, and your character is loosely based on him. So I wanted to just ask you about, playing a role that's kind of based on his childhood. What does that feel like to know that you're, stepping into his shoes in the movie?
Um, well, yeah, I guess a lot of people have said, does it feel any more special that I'm actually playing somebody that existed rather than an actual role? And I'm gonna say yes, in a way it can be a little bit more special, and you might think there'd be more pressure because you're trying to portray something great, but in the end, it's all art. That's what James made really clear, and that's what I tried to do is just make sure that I was playing around with the script and getting what James wanted out of it and finding an artistic version of Paul for me myself.
Yeah, that's great, and that's exactly what I wanted to ask you next, which is what was working with James like, not just as a director and as a writer, but trying to explore who the character is and what kind of insights he had into the differences between him and the character. What were those conversations like between the two of you?
They were great. I spent 2.5 months with James, so I got into a quick rhythm of working with him and getting to see him. And I mean, in general, it was great. But I really took away these great opportunities and these great things that I got to learn with James. Like he told me that the camera sees through you, which is deeper than it sounds because when you have scenes where you're not talking or when it's adjusted you have to think like the character. You can't sit there and just be like, it's yeah, you have to think like it.
That's really insightful, and I think that really comes through in your performance because there are a lot of quiet moments, and we really get to kind of see and experience what Paul is feeling like. Before we turn to some of the scenes and some of the other characters, I just wanted to ask about the time that the film is set. It's set in Queens, New York, in 1980. You'd have to correct me if I'm wrong, but I'm pretty sure you weren't born in 1980. So I just wanted to ask you, what was that research like? Did you do research on the period? What was it like to, what was the country like? What was New York like in the 80s? Was that important to you to kind of get into the character?
Well, I think my research was walking on set. The production designer Happy Massey really gave a feel for me to know what it was like in 1980 because before this project, I didn't really know a lot about that period besides, I mean, basic things like how it was, leg warmers, no internet. Um, but besides that, I didn't really know anything. But walking on set helped me portray Paul and helped me get into the feel of 1980s.
That's great. I want to ask you about some of your co-stars too, because I'm sure they helped kind of get into the film and the time and start to feel like a family. First of all, I my favorite scenes in the movie are between you and your grandfather, Anthony Hopkins, who's so
Mhm.
great. The two of you have such a great bond on screen. Just talk about, working with Anthony, meeting him for the first time, and trying to build that relationship and rapport because it's so beautiful and so great on screen.
These are my favorite questions. I'm so glad you asked that. It was great working with Anthony Hopkins because he made me feel comfortable. And when I was working with him, he was so smart and wise and he had so much wisdom. He walked on set and told James what to do. And I mean, yeah, in general it was great working with him, but he taught me some important things like speak clearly because it's important that people hear you and he called me Jelly Bean in the movie and we learned to salsa dance together.
That sounds great. I want to ask about your parents in the movie too, because two more incredible actors, Jeremy Strong and Anne Hathaway. Talk about, your relationship with them is so different from your relationship with your grandfather in the movie. So Talk about working with them and trying to explore some of those. Really, there are some emotional and intense scenes between them. So, what were kind of the discussions, and how did you three kind of find those moments in the movie and navigate them?
It was great. What I said about Anthony is Annie and Jeremy really made sure that I was comfortable doing the scenes and comfortable working with them. And with Annie, before we started filming together, I got to take a walk with her in Central Park, and she taught me about the poet Rumi, and we got to talk about each other's characters and what kind of acting styles we have. And speaking of that, with Jeremy, he stayed in character, which I thought was very unique and impressive, and the way that he was able to just portray Irvin so that the actors around him would help drop into their characters.
Yeah, I can't imagine working with those two and Anthony and all these actors on this film must have been an incredible experience for you. One more co-star to talk about before we talk about some of the scenes in the movie is Jalen Webb, who plays Johnny, Paul's best friend. I love the relationship between the two of you that you build over the course of the film. Just talk about what is it first? What is it about those two characters that you think get along so well? Why did they kind of hit it off and start, such a great friendship right away?
They have big similarities, but besides that, they're both dreamers. They have these big ideas and dreams, and they collide them together, and they make even bigger dreams. And they're just they're dreamers, and they decide that they can do whatever they want, and they're not going to let anything stop them.
Absolutely, and it comes out in different ways in the movie. Talk about working with Jalen. He's around your age. There's a lot of kids in the movie, but the two of you, spend the most time together. What is it like, working with somebody around your age and learning from him? You both have different experiences in this industry, so just talk about your experience, spending time with Jalen.
I mean, it was great because I was spending time with Jalen, and we were both having these new experiences together. And like you said, it was also very special because we were at a close age. So that was nice to have somebody around my age for the next 2.5 months that I was filming.
Yeah, no question. I'm sure that was great to have on set, a friend. Let's talk about something you mentioned earlier, which is how art is so important to Paul's life. You described him as an artist first and foremost.
Mhm.
Talk about that theme throughout the movie, and what is it that Paul can express through art that he can't really express in his schoolwork or maybe with his family or with his brother? What is it about art that is so special to Paul, do you think?
Creativity. I think what he sees in art is special because he sees more than just paint on paper. He sees so much more, and I think that's made clear a couple times in the movie. And he sees creativity, and I think he thinks a lot about that.
Yeah, that's so beautifully said. And there's a great scene where the school takes a field trip to the Guggenheim, and you get to see some Kandinsky's. Talk about that experience of filming in the Guggenheim. I'm sure the place was shut down for the film, and just having that museum to yourself and the other actors and the crew must have been an incredible experience. What was that like?
It's great you say that because it was actually hard to act because out of the 2.5 months, this was my last day of filming. So I had so much in my mind, and I wanted to say so much to all the crew members and all the actors, but I had to work on the scene. And besides that, it was great because we had the whole museum to ourselves. So when we weren't filming, I could go anywhere I want. I said this in the film, and I still think this. It's a cupcake. The way it's built, it's very impressive, the architecture.
Yeah, it's beautiful, and I love the scenes there and how James shoots the space. It's really visually striking. It really captures the space really well.
Mhm.
So no spoilers because this will run before people have seen the film. But I want to ask you a couple of questions about the end of the movie, just about what you take away from the message, what you think Paul's kind of arc is, those final moments. So let's start with just when you watched it back. And when you read the script, what is your takeaway at the end of the movie? How does it make you feel? Where your character ends and what you think is going to happen in the future.
I think it's awesome you said that because what makes this movie different from others is the ending isn't really a happy ending. It's what you make of it. In the end, Paul walks off. That's all I'm gonna say. Paul walks off. And the thing that makes it special is it's up to the viewer that what happens. He could walk away and run away, or he could stay with his mom for the rest of his life. Or he could be the James Gray and go to the Cannes Film Festival and the New York Film Festival and be the great director.
Well, it's so funny that you mentioned that because that's exactly what I wanted to ask you next, which is going to these film festivals. I don't know if this is your first time going to some of these film festivals, but what is it like for you to watch the film with an audience and then hear just the incredible response that the film has been receiving? I'm sure that's an incredible feeling sitting there in the audience. So talk to us about that.
It's magical because I haven't experienced this before. With the Cannes Film Festival, it was great because with the free time that I had, we got me, Jalen, and the director's kids, Henry, Georgie, and Rafi. We got to swim in the Côte d'Azur in the city of Cannes, and that was fun because got to have a lot of free time. And with these other film festivals, it's crazy because there's so much happening at once, and there's all of this to take in, and it's so great. I haven't experienced anything like this before.
And before I let you go, Banks, I just want to ask you. I mentioned earlier, some of my favorite scenes in the film are yours opposite your grandfather, Anthony Hopkins. What are you most excited for people to see? Because they might be watching this before the film comes out. What are some of your favorite moments or scenes? What are you most excited for? Wide audiences to see when it opens wide.
Oh, when we were filming, James had a card next to his screen, the screen where he watched the camera, and the card said 4 words: heartwarming, humor, loss, and warmth. Thank you, Dad. And warmth and loss. So those 4 words. And I think that really shapes the movie because I hope they take away of how moving this movie was. And yeah, I mean it's really what you make of it.
Absolutely. Banks, congratulations on the film Armageddon Time, and thanks so much for talking to Gold Derby today.
Thank you very much. Have a good day.